"Sir, you've been marked as a discrepant passenger." The sentence fell like a gavel in the first-class cabin of Horizon Star Flight 883. Dr. Isaiah Grant didn't react, not visibly. He stood calmly in the aisle, his tailored navy suit uncreased his boarding pass, clearly reading Seat 6A. But Claire Donovan didn't care. The flight attendant's eyes stayed locked on her tablet, the digital permission slip that allowed her to erase a man like Isaiah without ever saying his name. Behind her, passengers shifted, whispered, judged. A white man in a pinstriped suit stepped forward like a chosen witness. "You're in my seat," he said coldly, then smacked Isaiah's phone to the floor. Still, Isaiah didn't move, because 10 minutes later this wasn't going to be their cabin anymore. It would be his. He wasn't just the man they tried to humiliate. He was the man about to own the entire airline. Before we dive into the full story, comment below where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss powerful stories like this one. The phone lay on the carpet between rows 5 and 6. Face down. Still recording. Isaiah didn't stoop for it right away. Instead, he locked eyes with Victor Crane, the man who'd knocked it away. "I said move," Victor repeated. The surrounding cabin air tightened. Passengers froze mid-scroll. A child's snack dropped to the floor unnoticed. Isaiah finally leaned down, picked up his phone, dusted it off, and looked at the screen. Camera still rolling. Timestamps and cabin chatter captured perfectly. He smiled just slightly. "Row 6A, Isaiah said calmly. "It's printed right here." He extended the boarding pass to Claire Donovan. She didn't take it. Just glanced, then tapped her tablet with robotic indifference. "You're not showing as confirmed." Isaiah raised an eyebrow. "TSA cleared me. Gate agents scanned me. If I'm not in your system, maybe your system's broken." Claire tilted her head, the way people do when they're sure they're right, but still afraid someone might challenge them. Behind her, Victor took a step closer again. Too close. "You don't belong here," he said. "Just step out, man. Let's not make a scene." Aisha Patel, seated quietly in 5C, looked up from her tablet. Her slate gray suit was as precise as her words would soon be. She didn't speak yet. She didn't need to. Isaiah turned to Claire. "Are you going to confirm my boarding pass or keep letting your customer service policy be dictated by—" him? Claire's lips thinned. "Sir, I'm asking for your cooperation." "No," Isaiah said. "You're demanding submission." The silence in the cabin had shifted. Not passive anymore. Electric. Watching. Judging. Javier Morales, seated in 8A, a popular travel vlogger with over 600,000 YouTube followers, adjusted his phone discreetly to start recording from his lap. Discrepant passenger in first class, he whispered to his live stream. "Black guy in a tailored suit. Boarding pass says 6A. Let's see where this goes." Isaiah took his seat without being told. A calculated move. Quiet power. Victor snorted. "You've got some nerve." Isaiah ignored him and reached into his bag. A leather folder. Inside his own internal documentation of Quantum Core's latest acquisition targets and a backup plan he never thought he'd use today. He tapped his smartwatch once. A blue icon pulsed. Connection to Quantum HQ established. Across Miami, in a corner office overlooking the skyline, Nadia Cole saw the signal. Her fingers flew across her keyboard. "Boss just hit the alert," she said. "Protocol Live asked an assistant. Phase 1 in 90 seconds. Onboard Aisha finally spoke. "Claire, you've seen his ID, his boarding pass. You've watched a physical altercation, and yet you've acted only against the man being attacked." Claire hesitated. "Ma'am, please stay in your seat." Aisha's voice turned steel. "I'm legal counsel. I'm not staying silent." Victor turned to her with a sneer. Figures. Legal woman jumping in. Aisha didn't flinch. Victor Crane. Private equity. Horizon Star investor, yes. He blinked. How do you know? She tapped her tablet. You made headlines in 2022 for hostile restructuring in Novatrans Logistics, accused of falsifying executive qualifications. Charges dropped due to a data inconsistency. Correct Victor's face paled. I keep receipts, Aisha said. Isaiah leaned back, eyes on Claire. This is your last moment to course correct. Claire's voice didn't shake. You're not showing confirmed, sir. That's final. Isaiah tapped his smartwatch again. Nadia began the Phase 1 bid process. Already in motion, she replied, voice crisp in his ear. A wave of tension passed through his shoulders. Calm, measured, predictable. Behind him, Javier's stream passed 8,000 viewers. Victor saw the screen. Are you filming this? You can't film in here. Javier didn't look up. I'm not stopping. From row 4B, an older woman leaned toward her husband. Isn't that the guy from Forbes? Her husband squinted. Dr. Isaiah Grant, Quantum Core. Victor barked a laugh. That guy, please. He's pretending. Fake suit, fake seat, fake story. Aisha lifted her tablet toward the ceiling. Claire, you now have formal notice legal escalation has been initiated. Horizon Star's board will be contacted directly. This flight is being recorded and will be submitted as evidence. Claire didn't blink. Instead, she turned toward the galley, her comms mic flashing red. Cabin Ops. This is lead attendant. We have a discrepancy in 6A. Manifest does not match. Requesting cabin enforcement. Isaiah didn't move, didn't blink. He looked at the camera lens peeking out from Javier's tray, and with a calm, chilling certainty, he whispered, You're not just profiling me. He paused. You're provoking a hostile corporate takeover. The cabin froze. Aisha looked up. Dr. Grant. He nodded. Nadia has greenlit escalation. By the time we're wheels up, I may very well own the plane they tried to throw me off of. Isaiah remained seated. Still like stone. But beneath that stillness was a signal, and the signal was spreading. Across the cabin, Javier Morales whispered to his live stream, Something's happening. I think this guy's bigger than anyone realizes. 12,000 live viewers. And rising. In Miami, Nadia Cole's eyes darted across 3 screens. Charts shifted. The bid to acquire controlling shares of Horizon Star Airlines had entered Phase 2. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She pressed one key. The system replied. Partial acquisition 37% confirmed. Across the aisle, Victor Crane was still smirking, still convinced this was theater. You think you can outstatus me, he said loud enough for other passengers to hear. I built companies like yours out of napkin sketches. Isaiah finally turned to him. Slowly. You built exits, he replied. I build infrastructure. Victor scoffed but didn't reply. Meanwhile, Aisha Patel typed swiftly. Legal documentation was being drafted in real time. Every word Claire said. Every false claim. Every policy breached. Isaiah, she said softly. Phase 2 is sticking. But we've hit an internal firewall. It's not external resistance. It's internal tech. They're blocking some of the trading pings from one location. Isaiah's eyes narrowed. From inside this plane, Aisha nodded. 2 rows ahead, tucked near the forward bulkhead, Ethan Pierce hunched behind his slim silver console. His job was to monitor systems seat assignments, cabin controls, even emergency locks. But now he was doing more than that. Lines of code flickered on his screen. He hovered over a module labeled CIC, Central Investor Confirmations. He typed, Block investor ID GRT0Z1X flag purchase flow. Suspicious delay transaction confirmation 15 Mitzni hit. Enter. Inside the cabin, Isaiah's armrest interface flickered. The recline function, already disabled, flashed again, then locked completely. A soft red bar appeared under his seat number on the overhead console. Aisha looked at her screen. "They're manually intervening," she whispered. "This isn't a glitch. It's a sabotage." Isaiah didn't react. He tapped his watch once more. Nadia confirmed. "Someone is interfering with the acquisition channel. Can you trace?" "It's coming from a cabin node. Mid-forward cluster. Same subnet as in-flight control." He glanced toward the front of the aircraft. Toward Ethan. "Patch in a signal loop," Isaiah said. "Redirect our trades through offshore nodes. Make them think it's just latency." On it. At that same moment, Claire Donovan returned from the galley. Her posture was tighter now, controlled fury behind her smile. "Sir," she said, "for the final time, you're delaying this flight. Seat 6A is under verification hold." Isaiah didn't look at her. "Your seat is being locked for safety," she added. "Please refrain from touching any controls." Aisha tilted her screen up again. "Claire, Horizon Star's investor tracking API has just detected acquisition volume spikes across 3 continents. Do you even understand the situation you've walked into?" Claire blinked. "Is that a threat?" Isaiah looked up, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's a receipt." Claire stepped back, unnerved. From the rear, a new voice chimed in. "I've seen him before. It was the older woman from row 4B. She held up her phone. "Isn't this the guy who was on the Forbes cover, the one with the AI lab?" Her screen showed a profile, Dr. Isaiah Grant, Quantum Core, CEO, AI Visionary, net worth 3.1B. Murmurs swelled. Javier's stream hit 20,000 viewers. Victor leaned toward Claire. Voice low. "If this spirals, you're not pinning it on me." Claire didn't answer. She was staring at the cabin interface again, her tablet showing Isaiah's seat, now marked in red. Compliance override. She didn't initiate that. Her eyes flicked toward Ethan. Aisha saw it too. "Isaiah," she said, "I think we've got a rogue systems tech." Isaiah's tone remained calm. "Name Ethan Pierce, Cabin Systems Coordinator." Isaiah tapped his watch. "Nadia flagged that name. Run a background check." On it. Behind the bulkhead, Ethan's face was taut. He looked down at his console, then around the cabin. Passenger eyes were turning toward him now. Javier had angled his phone toward the bulkhead. "Who is that guy?" "He's been typing non-stop." A whisper. Then another. Then someone spoke louder. "Is that guy messing with the seat system?" Claire moved quickly. Too quickly. "That's a technician. Authorized personnel. Do not record crew stations." A voice from the rear. "Why not?" "We're watching something illegal happen." Ethan's hands froze over the keys. Aisha turned to Isaiah. "I'm preparing a direct notice to the FAA Manifest Compliance Division. He's tampering in real time." "Make it public," Isaiah said. She tapped the screen. One file. One button. Uploaded. On Javier's screen, a comment popped up. "Hep El Foyer just tweeted. We are reviewing concerns from Horizon Star Flight 883. Victor shifted in his seat. "This is crazy." Isaiah didn't look away. "This is change. And it's just begun." It was subtle at first. Claire's tablet blinked. The passenger manifest app reloaded, then crashed. She tapped it again. Still frozen. Then the overhead lighting dimmed, not for ambience, but unintentionally. System lag. Isaiah's seat marked with a red bar. Minutes ago, now pulsed orange. Unstable. Claire turned sharply toward Ethan. "What's going on?" He didn't look up. System lag. Probably from the cabin interface sync. she hissed. "You caused it, didn't you?" I followed procedure. Ethan muttered, but his fingers trembled above the keyboard. From row 8, Javier Morales whispered to his stream, "They're losing control. 26,000 live. And climbing." Aisha's voice broke the silence. "Isaiah, Horizon Star's internal board Slack just added a private channel named Emergency Equity Containment." "They're watching?" Isaiah tilted his head, but his voice was even. "Then let's make sure they see everything." At that moment, Claire turned to the intercom and pressed hard. "This is lead cabin crew. I'm requesting immediate escalation to command tower. We're dealing with a Category 3 passenger interference and cabin tech breach." She didn't mention that her own team had initiated the tampering. In row 5C, Aisha's tablet lit up again. SEC alert partial acquisition verified. 49%. We're 1 point away from control. Isaiah remained seated, motionless, but the ripples kept spreading. In row 2B, an elderly white man stood up. Crisp shirt, veteran's cap. His hands were slow steady. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "I need to say something." All heads turned. Claire stiffened. "Sir, please remain seated." He ignored her. "My name is Robert Ames," he said. "Retired captain. 32 years flying for Horizon Star before the merger. I've seen a lot of first-class fights, power plays, racism tucked into procedures." He looked directly at Claire. "But you, I remember you." The cabin went still. "You were on my crew in 2011. Flight 428 to Austin. There was a passenger, black young, well-dressed. First class. You marked him as unverified, despite his clear boarding pass." Claire's voice was brittle. "Captain, that was a misunderstanding." Robert shook his head. "You said he was disruptive. I checked security tapes later. He never said a word." He looked at Isaiah. "That man left the plane quietly. But what you didn't know, Claire, I filed a bias complaint against you the next day." Claire's face flushed. "There's no record of that." Robert smiled, sad. "Exactly." Gasps spread down the aisle. Aisha checked her screen. She's right. No record. But Robert's name does appear in a deleted submission log, buried behind HR firewall tags. Victor tried to interrupt. "This isn't about ancient history." Robert's voice sharpened. "No. This is about patterns. You think this is a blip, a one-off? Look around. This airline has operated with a manual that says, 'Discriminate quietly.' Javier's stream soared past 30,000 listeners. Passengers were whispering now. I remember her, a woman in 3F said. She made my husband stand while verifying a pass that had already been scanned. She asked if I could afford this seat, once added another. One by one, whispers became testimonies. Claire's voice cracked. "This isn't a court. You can't try me here." Aisha's eyes never left her screen. "I don't need to. The SEC and FAA just added your name to the investigation log." Isaiah finally spoke. "Claire, the systems you've hidden behind screens, badges, checklists, none of them protect you from accountability." Her fists clenched. "You don't know what this job is like." Isaiah stood. Finally, for the first time since boarding. "Actually," he said, "I do." He stepped into the aisle. Calm, measured, unshaken. "I spent 10 years building predictive risk models for flight crew behavior under institutional pressure. You think I don't understand stress fatigue and flawed culture?" He faced the front of the plane. "I just understand something else more." Silence. Legacy. Aisha looked up. Confirmation. 51%. Acquisition complete. You're now the controlling stakeholder. Isaiah's eyes didn't widen. His jaw didn't clench. He simply exhaled. This flight doesn't belong to prejudice anymore. For years, first-class cabins thrived on discretion. Low voices, Unwritten rules. Quiet erasure. But not today. Today, silence was a liability. Claire Donovan's lips moved, but nothing she said held weight anymore. The passengers no longer looked to her for authority. Their eyes were locked on seat 6A, where Dr. Isaiah Grant stood not just as a passenger, but now as the airline's new chairman. Victor Crane shifted uncomfortably in his seat. His phone buzzed repeatedly. Notifications. Mentions. His name was trending not for the right reasons. Aisha Patel's tablet vibrated. Javier Morales' livestream has crossed 42,000 users, she said calmly. CNN just shared it on their digital homepage. In the aisle, Claire turned to the cockpit as if hoping the captain might rescue her. But the cockpit door stayed closed. "Why aren't you people doing something?" she hissed at two crew members near the galley. They stepped back, no longer protectors, but witnesses. Then it happened. Aisha tapped her tablet again. "Isaiah," she said, "internal cabin surveillance footage from the moment Victor struck your phone has just been decrypted. It's playing on cabin screens." Isaiah tilted his head slightly. "I didn't authorize that." "I know," she replied. Simone did. All across the cabin, seatback screens flickered. Safety video feeds vanished, replaced with grainy overhead camera footage from 10 minutes earlier. Gasps echoed. There clearly visible was Victor Crane, reaching forward, slapping the phone from Isaiah's tray table. The audio was crisp. "You're in my seat," Victor growled. Smack. Move. Then silence. Then Claire stepping forward and targeting Isaiah instead. Passenger after passenger watched the loop. Once. Twice. No one spoke. Finally, someone in row 7A said it aloud. She saw that. She chose to ignore it. Victor jolted up in his seat. "This is manipulation. You can't show private footage without consent." Isaiah looked at him coolly. "That footage belongs to me. As of 13 minutes ago, so does the system that stored it." Victor's mouth opened, then shut. Claire turned to Ethan. "Shut it down." He stared at her. "I can't. Chair level override is active." "You mean his override?" she hissed. Ethan didn't answer. In 8A, Javier whispered to his stream. "You're watching in-flight footage that proves the new airline chairman was profiled and harassed on camera, and they tried to delete him." His comments section exploded. "This is historic. This is justice." Unity Air rising. Passengers began pulling out their phones. No one hid anymore. They filmed openly. Claire backed toward the galley wall, her expression shifting from control to panic. Isaiah didn't raise his voice. Instead, he addressed the entire cabin. "You've just seen what most people only feel, and what some spend lifetimes trying to prove." He paused. "This time, we didn't need a lawsuit. We needed a lens." Aisha stood. "Claire Donovan, you're on record obstructing boarding procedure, falsifying manifest status, and escalating a false accusation under federal aviation law." Claire gasped. "You can't." "We already did," Aisha said. "The FAA just flagged your license. Effective immediately, you are relieved of duty." The two junior crew members, previously frozen, stepped forward. "Ma'am," one said awkwardly, "we'll escort you to the crew seat in the galley until touchdown." She resisted. "This isn't over." Isaiah didn't flinch. "No, it's just beginning." Claire turned toward Victor for backup, but Victor was already packing his bag. His phone buzzed again. A new notification: Crane Capital shares down 6.4%, following live profiling incident. "Damn it," he muttered. Aisha looked toward Ethan next. "You attempted to override in-flight system integrity to suppress an acquisition signal." He blanched. "I was following a protocol chain." "No, you were following a power structure that collapsed the moment it was questioned." Isaiah's voice remained calm. "You're dismissed as well." Ethan slumped in his chair. Then a voice from behind. It was Danielle, the young black flight attendant. I knew something was wrong. I just didn't think we were allowed to speak. Isaiah turned toward her. You don't work in silence anymore. Not under Unity Air. She stared, eyes glistening. From the cabin wall, the screens shifted again. This time, a message. Welcome to Unity Air, where equity flies first. Javier caught it all. History, he whispered. Then another twist. A message pinged on Aisha's screen. Isaiah, she said, we've received an anonymous data drop. It contains 6 months' worth of internal communications between Claire and mid-level managers, mocking diversity hires, labeling certain passengers as secondary clears. Isaiah nodded slowly. Send it to the Equity Pulse portal. Let the public see the system behind the seat map. A wave passed through the cabin, not just emotion, but release. They weren't watching a scandal. They were witnessing a system unravel, and someone finally had the tools to rebuild it. The overhead chime dinged again, but this time it wasn't the usual cabin bell. It was an internal alert. Aisha glanced at her tablet. FAA bulletin just went public, she announced. The agency confirms receipt of manifest manipulation evidence and has formally opened a compliance violation against Horizon Star Airlines. Gasps rolled through the cabin like sudden turbulence. In 8A, Javier Morales muttered into his stream. Did you hear that the FAA is officially investigating? Live. While we're still in the air. 47,000 viewers. And climbing. Victor Crane let out a curse under his breath. They're going to bury us. Across the aisle, Claire Donovan was slumped in a galley jump seat, eyes hollow, stripped of her title. No badge. No control. She stared blankly at the screen, now rotating between Isaiah's name and Unity Air's new message. But Isaiah wasn't focused on her anymore. He was watching the rest of the cabin. People who had stared in silence were now speaking. Testimonies bubbled to the surface. From 3A, she made my daughter switch seats on a different flight. Said she didn't look like a platinum member. From 6D, I once saw Victor berate a young flight attendant. She cried in the bathroom for an hour. It wasn't chaos. It was catharsis. Isaiah remained centered, but the earth beneath the airline shifted. Aisha leaned in. Isaiah, we've crossed 54% ownership. The final tranche triggered a buyout clause from Horizon Star's secondary investors. What does that mean? She smiled. It means this wasn't a hostile takeover. She turned the screen so he could read. Grant Ventures' buyout proposal unanimously approved by Horizon Board 6 days ago. Isaiah blinked. Claire snapped her head up. What Victor froze. That's not possible. We would have been told. A quiet chuckle came from the rear of first class. A man in a muted brown jacket stood slowly. Older. Silver hair. Calm eyes. I believe I can speak to that. All eyes turned. The man reached into his inner pocket and pulled out a discreet ID card. It read, Board Member, Horizon Star Airlines, name Henry Caldwell. Claire's mouth dropped open. Mr. Caldwell, you were on this flight. He smiled politely. Yes, unannounced as I often do. I prefer to see how staff behave when no one's watching. A beat. Well, he said, glancing at Claire, you've certainly made an impression. Victor stood. You're telling me this entire circus was sanctioned. Henry didn't flinch. I signed off on it myself. Isaiah turned slowly. Why wasn't I informed? Henry's voice softened. You were. Through channels. But certain internal managers. He looked pointedly at Ethan, decided to suppress the signals. Aisha gasped. You mean Ethan knew? Henry nodded. Claire didn't. Victor certainly didn't. But Ethan. He was aware of the acquisition as early as 3 days ago. Ethan's face turned ashen. That's not possible. I wasn't. Henry held up a hand. Save it. We're all past denials now. Javier whispered into his mic. A hidden board member just confirmed everything. The airline knew this was happening. The comment feed exploded. This is better than any movie. Justice Flight 883. I hope this guy runs for office. Aisha turned to Isaiah. We've triggered a full audit. The system Ethan tampered with. It's logging every keystroke. Isaiah didn't gloat. He exhaled slowly. They buried information, suppressed authority, tried to rewrite fact. Henry spoke again, and now they'll be held accountable. He nodded toward Isaiah. This is your airline now. Unity Air is officially registered with the Department of Transportation as a rebranded entity, Claire muttered from the galley. That name is a joke. Henry turned toward her. No, the joke was thinking no one would ever stand up. He looked around the cabin, and now someone has. Isaiah stepped forward, gaze steady on Henry. I won't waste this moment. Henry nodded. We didn't think you would. Just then, the overhead cabin lights shifted again. But this time, not because of Ethan. It was the pilot. His voice came over the PA. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. As you've likely gathered, today's flight has been eventful. We're preparing for descent into Miami. Local time is 4:27 p.m. A pause. I also want to say personally that we stand behind the leadership of Dr. Isaiah Grant. This airline has needed change for a long time. It arrived today 36,000 feet above the ground. The entire cabin applauded. Soft, but growing. And Isaiah. He didn't smile. He nodded because the ground wasn't just shaking. It was realigning. The seatbelt sign dinged on. Passengers slowly settled back into their seats, but no one's attention returned to overhead bins or snacks. All eyes remained locked on the figures unraveling in the front of the plane. Isaiah remained standing near 6A, grounded in silence. Aisha sat poised at 5C eyes, scanning updates with mechanical focus. Victor, however, was not ready to yield. He stood again, loud, almost theatrical. This entire flight has been hijacked by a narrative, he bellowed. We're making decisions based on live stream hysteria, social media mobs, not facts. Aisha didn't move. Isaiah didn't blink. Victor pulled out his phone. Here, he said, waving it like a sword. I have an email sent 2 months ago. It's from Quantum Core's legal team. It questions Isaiah's ethics, mentions possible violations. This is the real Isaiah Grant. Gasps moved through the cabin again, not because they believed him, but because of the sheer desperation in his voice. He opened the email and turned the screen outward. Read it yourselves. This man isn't who he pretends to be. Aisha calmly tapped her tablet. Isaiah permission, he nodded. Seconds later, the cabin screens lit up again. Not with Javier's footage this time, but with a crisp corporate dashboard labeled Unity Air Secure Compliance Interface. It displayed email subject, RE Dr. Isaiah Grant. Allegation review sent March 12, 2025. Status fake. Digitally falsified metadata, internal ID mismatch, source trace to Victor Crane's IP alias CRN.PVT-stake. The message blinked once more, then a red bar appeared. This communication was generated using unauthorized credentials. Originating domain unverified. Violation of SEC Disclosure Integrity Act. The cabin collectively gasped. Javier whispered into his mic. He forged the email. Victor's face turned crimson. That's not possible. This was forwarded to me. Henry Caldwell, the board member, stood again. Victor, I warned you 2 years ago about your scorched earth tactics. You don't bury threats. You light fires. And now one of them just consumed your career. Claire turned toward Victor, whispering harshly, "You did this. You just burned us all." Victor didn't respond. The cabin screen updated again. Action SEC alert for investigation launched Crane Capital stock down 8.7%. Public audit triggered. Aisha leaned slightly toward Isaiah. He just ended himself on camera. Isaiah stayed quiet. He didn't gloat. He let the system speak. Claire, meanwhile, was unraveling. "This is ridiculous," she stammered. "One flight, one misunderstanding, and suddenly everyone's a villain. I've worked here for 15 years. I've trained dozens of junior staff." Danielle, the young black attendant, spoke softly from the rear galley. "And how many of us quit?" "Claire, how many were made to feel small by you?" Claire blinked. Danielle stepped forward, her voice shaking, but clear. "I was told not to report anything. That complaint's disappeared. I was warned. Don't cause trouble. You called me passive. You made me do all the cleanup shifts." Claire's words died before they reached her lips. Isaiah turned slowly. "You built a tower out of silence, Claire, and now the foundation is crumbling." In seat 2B, Captain Robert Ames leaned forward. "And when the people at the top are finally forced to land, what do? Isaiah answered for him. "They scramble. They deny. They descend into noise." The pilot's voice returned over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've begun our final descent into Miami. Estimated time to touchdown is 14 minutes. Winds light. Skies clear." A pause. "And to those watching history unfold, thank you for your patience." Isaiah turned to Aisha. How many? She glanced at her screen. Live stream viewers, 73,000. CNBC coverage trending globally. SEC contact team requesting interview immediately upon landing. A short pause. "Oh, and Javier's clip is being featured on 60 Minutes next week." The camera panned across the cabin again. Phones raised, eyes wide. Victor slowly slumped into 6B. The seat next to Isaiah. He looked at him like a man staring at a closed door he used to own. "You win," Victor whispered. Isaiah shook his head. "This wasn't about winning. It was about ending something. So we can build what should have been there all along." Claire began crying softly in the galley. No one mocked her, but no one helped her either. Not this time. As the wheels extended and the Earth approached Unity Air's first flight born mid-air from rupture and reckoning, prepared to touch down. But they weren't just descending toward a runway. They were landing in a new reality. The wheels met the tarmac with a heavy but certain thud. The engines roared in deceleration, but inside the cabin no one stirred. There was no clapping, no celebratory murmur, just silence. The kind that comes not from relief, but reverence. Flight 883 had landed, but everyone on board knew the real descent had started an hour earlier, and they had all been passengers of a far greater journey. Isaiah remained standing until the seatbelt sign dimmed. Aisha gently reached for his arm. "You did it," she whispered, but Isaiah only nodded. "We started something. We haven't finished." Passengers slowly rose from their seats, some still filming, others simply absorbing. In row 8A, Javier Morales ended his stream. "To all 81 Zaratus of you who stayed with us, you just witnessed the rebirth of an airline and the collapse of denial. Stay tuned. Because this isn't over." He lowered his phone and exhaled. Wow. Meanwhile, the overhead screen shifted again. Live breaking Unity Air declared official by FAA, CNN, CNBC, BBC, Al Jazeera, Black CEO, rebrands, airline mid-flight video, "You're no tech titan here. Flight attendant fired on board, goes viral." Claire's face frozen in time, her words bitter and public, now looped across international feeds. She watched it from the galley. watched herself not as she thought she was, but as she had behaved. Victor, still in 6B, looked away. Outside, as the plane taxied, dozens of ground staff stood lining the tarmac. Most didn't move. A few recorded. Some simply stared at the tail number of a plane that minutes ago belonged to a different world. As they approached Gate 17, the bridge began extending. Inside the cabin, Captain Ames stood again. He nodded toward Isaiah. "You landed the flight," he said softly. "I just drove the machine." A few passengers clapped. Not many. Just enough. Danielle stood near the rear galley, eyes wide. "Sir," she said, approaching Isaiah. "What happens now?" Isaiah looked around. "At Unity Air, we write a new flight manual. We train new leaders, and we make sure no seat becomes a weapon again." Aisha glanced at her tablet. "Board statement just posted," she said. "Effective immediately, Unity Air confirms the permanent termination of Claire Donovan, Richard Vaughn, and Ethan Pierce. Pending investigations extended to Victor Crane and his firm for attempted digital forgery and interference with federal acquisition records." Danielle blinked. "Wait. Richard too?" Isaiah nodded. "Anyone who protected the system that allowed this must face accountability." Passengers gathered quietly in the aisle, waiting not just to deplane, but to witness the final minutes of a story they'd become part of. Then a sharp chime echoed. Aisha's tablet lit up. "Isaiah," she said, "Horizon Star's executive board, or what remains of it, just requested a formal in-person meeting." When she raised her eyebrows, "Now, they're outside, at the terminal." He exhaled. They didn't waste time. "They can't," Aisha said. "The world's already moved on. We own the airline, but now they need to survive the narrative." A flight attendant opened the main cabin door. A wave of light poured in. Dozens of reporters had already gathered beyond the glass. Microphones, cameras, phones, placards with Isaiah's face on them, and next to it, the Unity Air logo. Victor muttered, "They're turning this into theater." "No," Isaiah said quietly. "They're finally tuning into reality." A security team stepped aboard. "Dr. Grant will escort you through a private corridor." He shook his head. "No." Aisha looked up. "Are you sure?" Isaiah turned toward the passengers, many of whom were now filming again. "I boarded through the front. I'm walking out through the same door as everyone else." He faced Danielle. "Will you walk with me?" Her voice trembled. "Yes, sir." Javier turned his camera back on. Everyone watching, he's stepping off now. Not through VIP lanes, but through the aisle they tried to make disappear him from. Isaiah moved slowly. Every footstep felt like an imprint. Each row he passed, passengers nodded some whispered thanks. He reached the front, paused, turned, and spoke. "You all saw what happened, but more importantly, you saw that silence didn't stop it. Speaking up did. Standing firm did. Documenting did." He looked directly at the cameras. "We're not flying under false lights anymore. This cabin and this company will now operate in daylight." Then he stepped onto the jet bridge. The world roared outside. Isaiah stepped into the terminal like a man returning from war, not with wounds, but with witnesses. The moment he crossed the threshold from jet bridge to concourse, the flashbulbs erupted. Paparazzi, reporters, activists, executives. Everyone had questions, but no one dared speak first. Behind him, Danielle followed closely, her shoulders squared for the first time since boarding. Aisha walked on his left tablet, in hand voice steady. "Isaiah, they're here. The Horizon Star Interim Board, waiting in the executive lounge." He nodded. Javier Morales streamed from a respectful distance, whispering, All right, viewers, this is it. The confrontation we didn't know we needed. Isaiah Grant. Horizon's last chairman meeting the board he just replaced. As they reached the glass doors of the lounge, two suited men stepped out. One short, gray-haired, with a forced smile, James Whitford, interim chairman. The other, tall and quiet, was CFO Gregory Lang. Dr. Grant Whitford began offering a handshake. This wasn't how we imagined the transition. Isaiah didn't shake. It's never how you imagine when the system you built breaks in public. James forced a laugh. We don't condone what happened on that plane. Isaiah raised an eyebrow. Really? Because this, he turned to Aisha. This says otherwise. She tapped her tablet. A file opened connected wirelessly to the terminal's presentation screen. It displayed Recording Internal Board Strategy Call, February 5, 2025. Participant James Whitford, Gregory Lang. Richard Vaughn, duration 12 min status, verified by SEC. The lounge went dead silent. Then the audio played. James's voice rang out from the speakers. Yes, Claire's had complaints filed. No, we're not launching a formal review. It'll blow over as usual. Gregory chimed in. If we open that door, half the crew will start crying racism. That's a PR storm we don't need. Then Richard Vaughn. Keep those reports internal. Quiet discipline. If they want a parade, let them find a new job. The room froze. Gasps. A reporter outside whispered, Did he just say that Isaiah's voice cut through the air? That recording was buried. Found on a server your IT team thought was inaccessible. He turned to the two men. You didn't just tolerate bias, you protected it. James stumbled. That was taken out of context, Isaiah snapped back. No, that was the context. Danielle's eyes welled with tears. Aisha stepped forward. The file was recovered and submitted to the FAA, the Department of Labor, and the National Equity Council. Effective immediately, Unity Air will be operating under a new equity charter, published, reviewed, and audited quarterly. Gregory muttered, We were trying to protect the brand. Isaiah smiled. You failed. Then he turned toward the growing crowd behind the glass walls. Reporters raised their phones. Some passengers from Flight 883 stood nearby, nodding quietly. People who had watched it all unfold, not just the downfall, but the defiance. Javier whispered into his phone. We just heard audio proving Horizon executives buried racism reports to avoid PR risks. Back in the lounge, James tried once more. You can't just erase the entire legacy of Horizon Star. Isaiah shook his head. I'm not erasing it. I'm exposing it. And building something better where its shadow used to be. Security entered the lounge, flanking Isaiah, but not for protection. They were following his lead now. Aisha continued. We are filing breach of trust charges for record suppression. Internal review boards will investigate all compliance failures from the last 3 fiscal years. Gregory's face darkened. You'll burn the whole company. No, Isaiah said. You already did. I'm rebuilding. Then a new voice came. Female. Firm. I have something to add. Everyone turned. A woman in a white blazer stepped forward from the corner. Her badge read, DOJ Compliance Oversight Officer, Rebecca Miles. I've been monitoring this situation since the live feed began. And with today's data, the Department of Justice is opening an inquiry into civil rights violations under the Airline Passenger Protection Act. James turned white. Rebecca continued. We will be requesting access to all internal Horizon Star HR files for the past 5 years. Javier, still rolling, whispered, and now the Department of Justice is involved. You can't write this stuff. Isaiah stepped forward. I don't want revenge, he said softly. I want reform, and that begins here today, not with policy, but with truth. Danielle stepped beside him, and with voices that never got heard before. James tried to speak again, but Isaiah held up a hand. "I think we're done here." Then he turned to the public. "We're holding a press conference at Unity Air headquarters tomorrow. Every passenger on Flight 883 is invited. Every employee, and every voice." Javier ended his stream, then said out loud, "Welcome to the reckoning." The Unity Air press conference began not with fireworks, but with gravity. Inside the newly branded headquarters, still bearing traces of Horizon Star's old signage, hastily peeled away, journalists packed shoulder to shoulder. A row of blue and white Unity banners stood behind the podium like a new constitution waiting to be signed. The room buzzed with global media: CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, Reuters, local affiliates, independent creators. At the center of it all, Dr. Isaiah Grant. He stepped to the mic, not in a custom suit or flashy tie, but in a charcoal button-down and slacks. Measured, neutral, no symbols of victory, only purpose. "Good morning," he began. Flashes popped. Fingers hovered over keyboards. "I didn't come here to make headlines. I came here to tell the truth." He paused. 3 days ago, I boarded a flight with a valid ticket, a confirmed seat, and a name recognized in the technology and aviation world alike. What I encountered was not turbulence, but obstruction. What I faced wasn't random, it was systemic. The room was silent. In those 90 airborne minutes, a system built to deny people silently collapsed in public. He turned, slightly acknowledging Aisha Patel at his side. My legal counsel and our transition team recovered documents, footage, and communications verifying over 56 instances where Horizon Star Airlines suppressed or deleted formal complaints of racial profiling or misconduct within the last 24 months. Murmurs rippled through the press. In most of those cases, the complainants never even received a follow-up. Not because their voices were unimportant, but because their pain was inconvenient. A screen behind him lit up. Unity Air Compliance Log. Internal Suppression, Psychica. Filed 41, auto-flagged 29, deleted by mid-level management 17 flagged, mutilation is required. Aisha stepped forward, clicking to the next slide, review protocol, bypass engine. She spoke with crisp authority. This was the internal name for the auto-sorting algorithm that filtered complaints based on keywords like bias, profiling, and hostility. The system didn't process them. It buried them. One reporter raised a hand. Who designed the system? Aisha answered. Ethan Pierce, with approval from Richard Vaughn and 3 compliance officers, all of whom are now suspended pending federal review. Another hand shot up. What's being done to address those buried cases? Isaiah leaned in. We're reopening them. Every single one. Each affected passenger is being contacted, and every one of them will receive not only an apology, but public acknowledgement. The doors at the back of the press room swung open. A hush fell. A man in a gray hoodie stepped forward, holding a plain black external hard drive. The crowd turned as he walked directly to the podium. Security moved to intercept, but Isaiah raised his hand. He's expected. The man stepped up to the mic, voice shaking. My name is Malik Thomas. I used to work in back-end IT for Horizon Star. 2 years ago, I discovered that the system was configured to override whistleblower flags. I reported it. I was told I was overreacting. He placed the drive down. This is every auto-erased complaint log from the last 4 years. I saved it when I left. I didn't know what to do, but I do now. Isaiah looked him in the eye. You did the right thing. Malik nodded and quietly returned to the audience, now visibly emotional. Aisha picked up the drive and held it before the press. This data has already been mirrored to a secure public transparency portal. We're not just revealing Horizon's secrets, we're refusing to let them die. Isaiah turned back to the crowd. We often talk about erasure like it's metaphorical, but in this industry, it's been literal. Pressing delete doesn't erase truth, it only postpones it. The screen changed again. Unity Air Transparency Statement. All equity logs, public quarterly. Bias reports, mandatory anonymous reporting restored, outside oversight enforced. One final click. The system isn't closed anymore. Isaiah let the slide speak for a moment, then continued. We are not perfect. We will make mistakes. But those mistakes will no longer be protected by silence. We built Unity Air not to be flawless, but to be accountable. Javier Morales, seated in the third row, whispered to his phone, "This is what reform looks like." Isaiah ended with no flourish, no rally cry, just the truth. The story of this airline doesn't end with a lawsuit, a live stream, or a scandal. It begins with a decision, one that every organization, every leader, and every passenger must make. Do we protect perception, or do we protect people? He stepped away from the mic. The press didn't applaud immediately. They paused, processing, because no one could delete what they had just heard. Not this time. Not ever again. The press conference had ended, but the reckoning had just begun. Inside Unity Air's command center, formerly Horizon Star's boardroom, Isaiah Grant, Aisha Patel, and a half-dozen new directors sat before a curved screen displaying a single file, Equity Audit Report, Phase 1. Duration, 36 months, source. Employee logs, passenger claims, internal routing data, volume 3.7 million entries, status. Public Isaiah folded his hands. Open it. The file exploded into a grid of charts, heat maps, timestamps, and voice transcriptions. The data danced across the screen, but the story it told was brutal. Aisha read aloud. Out of 3.7 million logged interactions, approximately 4% were flagged as discriminatory or exclusionary, most by AI-based sentiment review. She tapped to zoom in on one quadrant. Over 26,000 employee communications were identified where bias-coded language was used. Of those, only 74 cases were ever escalated. A hollow silence filled the room. 74, Isaiah repeated. In 3 years. Danielle, now promoted as Unity's Associate Training Director, looked down at her tablet, stunned. How did they sleep at night? Aisha didn't answer. Isaiah stood and walked to the screen. He pointed to a timeline spike. What happened here? Aisha pulled up the cross-reference. April 14th. 3 separate flight attendants filed reports against a regional manager who referred to black passengers as row fillers in internal chat logs. None of the reports were acknowledged. The manager was later promoted. The weight in the room thickened. Isaiah spoke quietly. Then we'll name them. Aisha nodded. We've scrubbed for false positives. These are verified. She tapped one final key. The list populated on the main screen. Charcush R. Vaughn, suppressed 17 reports. E. Pierce, engineered internal bypass. C. Donovan, subject of 23 unaddressed bias complaints. J. Whitford, directed no review policy. Lang Legal Group, partnered to design defensive documentation protocols. The last name caught Danielle off guard. Wait, she said. Lang Legal Group. As in the one that just announced they want to advise Unity Air's Equity Board. Aisha nodded. Yes. Publicly, they're reforming. Privately, they wrote the playbook Horizon used to dismiss bias cases. Isaiah's gaze sharpened. They sent us a letter of support yesterday. Danielle frowned. And we're supposed to trust them. Aisha didn't flinch. No. But someone inside didn't. She clicked into a new message. Anonymous submission from LLG internal subject, Irie. We can't stay silent. Aisha began to read. I'm a junior partner at Lang. I've worked for 3 years watching our firm justify cruelty sanitize reports and teach corporations how to legally discard people's pain. But I've saved everything. Internal strategy memos, meeting recordings, contractual language tailored to avoid liability. I've attached it all. I want to testify. I want this to stop. Attached were 42 documents, legal diagrams, clause matrices, sample redactions. One file stood out: Obfuscation Protocol V3.2, Horizon Star Custom Edition. Isaiah looked at Danielle. Truth, he said quietly. It always leaks, even from the top. Javier Morales, who had been granted limited access to Unity Air's backend for a new docuseries, stood in the corner, camera in hand. Do we go public with this now? He asked. Aisha turned to Isaiah. Your call. Isaiah thought for a moment, then nodded. We release the audit in full. No redactions. No legal spin. Let the public see not just who got fired, but how the machine was built. Aisha smiled, grim and satisfied. I'll publish it to the transparency portal. SEC and DOJ copies already queued. Isaiah turned to the group. We're not just flipping the power dynamic. We're documenting every hinge it turned on. Danielle added, and we train every new employee with this report as required curriculum. Aisha gave a thumbs up, already writing the module. Just then, Isaiah's smartwatch buzzed. A message from Nadia Cole, still stationed at the Miami Quantum Core office. Breaking Lang Legal Group stock, halted after leak. Investors call for internal probe. DOJ subpoenas incoming. Isaiah exhaled slowly. They tried to help us clean the mess they made, he muttered. And their own walls gave them up. Danielle looked out the window. You think people will read it all? Isaiah responded without hesitation. They will. Because now the truth is finally harder to ignore than the lie. And somewhere across the country, as the audit hit the public site, thousands of employees, travelers, regulators, and everyday viewers saw the message blinking on unityair.org. The system didn't break. It was designed this way. Today, we're rewriting it. Together. The rain outside Unity Air HQ came quietly, a soft drizzle that barely touched the tinted glass of the 18th floor. Inside, Isaiah Grant reviewed another wave of new applicant files, people inspired by what had happened aboard Flight 883. Dozens were former Horizon Star employees. Others were new voices untouched by the system's decay. And one application stood out. The name Malik Reeves. Position applied, legal intern. School Howard University 2L law student. Isaiah handed the file to Aisha. Check the cover letter, he said. She read silently. Then her brows arched. Oh. Isaiah nodded. Bring him in. 20 minutes later, a young black man entered the conference room with nervous poise. Crisp shirt. Quiet eyes. But something in his posture said, I've been waiting years for this. Mr. Grant, he said softly, it's an honor. Isaiah stood and shook his hand. Tell me your story, Malik. In your words. Malik took a breath. 8 years ago, I was on a flight from Atlanta to Denver. Horizon Star. I was 12. Flying with my mom. A pause. We were in row 32, near the rear lavatory, and I saw you. You were in first class, seat 2A. I remember because my mom whispered, that man builds AI. He was on the news. Isaiah's eyes narrowed slightly. Malik continued. Then it happened. A flight attendant came over and asked to see your ticket. You showed it. She said it wasn't valid. You stayed calm. But she made a scene. Aisha stopped typing. Malik's voice trembled. They pulled you off that plane. She called 2 ground agents, said you were belligerent. I remember your calm. I remember your silence. and I remember recording it." Isaiah leaned forward. "You have the footage." Malik's lips curled into a sad smile. "I did, but when we landed, TSA asked to review my mom's phone. They said it was routine." Isaiah knew what came next. "They deleted the file," Malik said it was corrupted. "But I'd already sent a backup to my old Gmail. I was 12. I didn't even think it mattered. Until I saw you again. On the news. Buying the Airline." He reached into his bag and slid over a small flash drive. "It's not the best resolution. And I was just a kid. But you need to see what you looked like that day." And what they did. Isaiah took it in silence. Aisha inserted the drive into her tablet. The video loaded. Grainy. Shaky. A young Isaiah, 8 years younger, stood calmly in first class. A white flight attendant towered over him, shouting that he didn't belong there. Passengers nearby looked away. Security walked in. No resistance. No protest. Just quiet dignity and a system that didn't care. Aisha turned the tablet to Isaiah. This changes the timeline." Malik nodded. "That moment changed me. I decided to go into law after that, not because I wanted to fight, but because I wanted to make systems remember." Isaiah looked at the young man. "Why Unity Air?" Malik didn't hesitate. "Because you didn't just change a policy. You changed how justice feels. You taught us that dignity isn't negotiable." Aisha smiled. "Welcome aboard, Malik." But Malik raised a hand. "There's one more thing." He opened his satchel again. "I tracked down the name of the flight attendant from that flight. Her name was Linda Garrison. She retired last year." Quietly. But before she did, she submitted a testimonial for internal Horizon records. I requested it under public access through the whistleblower channel. He handed Aisha a transcript. It read, "I knew who he was. I saw the seat. I still called it invalid. It wasn't about the ticket. It was about control. I regret that. I regret not being called out, because maybe then I could have learned." Isaiah stared at the words. Malik added gently, "You taught her to, even if it took 8 years." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Isaiah leaned back in his chair. "This isn't just about erasing a name from a manifest," he said. "It's about restoring it to memory." He turned to Aisha. "Upload the video. Frame it." The day the seat was stolen. Let the world see what we forgot. Javier, watching remotely from the media room, whispered to his camera. Viewers Unity Air just recovered the moment it all began. And across the internet, as the clip went live, a title flashed across millions of screens. He was quiet. They erased him. Now he owns the airline. 2 weeks after Unity Air's rebirth, turbulence struck not from the skies, but from within. Isaiah had just stepped off a red-eye flight from Los Angeles, where Unity's new training initiative had launched, when Aisha met him at the gate, face tight with concern. "We've got a leak," she said. Isaiah's eyes narrowed. Internal Aisha nodded. Board level. Former Horizon exec. James Whitford. Isaiah exhaled. What did he do? She handed him a slim folder. Inside a series of encrypted emails and meeting logs, recent timestamped and damning. Whitford's been coordinating with Marlon Vex, she said. Private equity predator, known for hostile takeovers. He's building a case that your acquisition was emotionally driven and not in shareholder interest. Isaiah frowned. On what grounds? Aisha raised an eyebrow. They're calling it a reactionary power grab, trying to appeal to legacy investors who still hold 11% of former Horizon shares. Isaiah processed that for a beat. And what's their angle? Aisha pulled out a final document. A meeting memo. They're holding an informal alignment summit right now at Terminal C's Executive Lounge. Vex? Whitford. 3 ex-board members, 2 press advisors. Isaiah didn't say a word. He just started walking. Aisha called after him. "What are you doing, boardroom fire drills?" he said without turning. "You put them out while they're still small." Within minutes, Isaiah arrived at the executive lounge, a glass-walled chamber tucked behind opaque partitions. Outside, 2 guards in ill-fitting suits eyed him, but didn't stop him. He pushed the door open. Inside sat Marlon Vex, bald, square-shouldered, with a voice that belonged to corporate coups and hostile takeovers. "If we challenge his control on procedural flaws and bias conflicts, we can delay rebranding for at least 2 quarters, he was saying. "That's when media fatigue sets in." Then he looked up and saw Isaiah Grant standing in the doorway. Conversation died. Whitford paled. One of the ex-board members stood abruptly. "This is a closed." Isaiah raised one hand, calm but commanding. "No, this is my lounge, and my airline." Vex didn't flinch. "Dr. Grant." Always theatrical. "We were just discussing strategic concerns." Isaiah stepped inside and let the glass door close behind him. Strategic or desperate? Vex leaned back in his leather chair. "You're building an airline around feelings, Isaiah. That's not sustainable. Investors want predictability. Profits, not public confessionals and open audits." Isaiah walked to the head of the table and calmly removed a slim USB drive from his jacket. He slid it across the table. "What's that?" Whitford asked. Voice tight. "The security feed from this room," Isaiah said. "Recorded in real time. You signed the waiver when you entered." Vex's jaw tensed. Isaiah continued. "I've reviewed every word you said, and your offer to buy up distressed Horizon shares to build a proxy attack is being reviewed by the DOJ right now." Whitford stood. "You can't just weaponize transparency." Isaiah turned to him. "That's not transparency's fault. That's the problem you were trying to hide." One of the ex-board members muttered, "You're burning bridges." Isaiah locked eyes with him. "No, I'm tearing down toll booths, and I'm building highways." Vex chuckled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "You're a smart man, Isaiah. But power doesn't stay in press clips. It stays in documents, contracts, strategy." Isaiah walked closer. "Then here's a strategy for you. I've consolidated all floating shares through Grant Ventures. As of 4:00 a.m. this morning, Unity Air now controls 91% of its own equity." Gasps around the room. Vex stood. "That's impossible." Isaiah's tone was quiet steel. "Not when you're playing chess and the other side's still arguing over which piece is the king." He turned to Whitford. "You tried to revive a company that buried people like me for decades. But you didn't realize something." Whitford blinked. What Isaiah leaned in slightly. "The grave you're digging. It was for yourself." Silence. Then the door opened again. Aisha stepped in. She placed a single sheet of paper on the table. "Notice of legal intent," she said. "Filed with the Civil Aviation Authority. All individuals named in today's meeting are now subject to regulatory inquiry for attempted manipulation of governance structure under false pretenses." Vex snatched the paper. "This is overreach." Isaiah smiled. "No, this is oversight. Something this airline never had until now." And with that, he turned and walked out of the room, Aisha beside him. Back in the lounge, Marlon Vex looked down at the paper again, and for the first time in years felt turbulence. The sun broke through low-hanging clouds as Unity Air prepared for its first full day of rebranded flights. At Gate 17A, the new Unity banners fluttered against the wind. The aircraft, freshly repainted in silver and blue, stood gleaming on the tarmac, not just as a machine, but as a message. A banner stretched across the jet bridge in soft serif letters. Welcome aboard. Your seat is your right. Inside Unity HQ, Isaiah Grant watched the feed from the operations center. The screen split into 12 views, passenger loading cockpit prep tarmac protocols, and one line of code pulsing in bold across the bottom. Flight DJ-883, Grant 1, Miami to Atlanta. Aisha entered holding a file and a cup of coffee. "You're sure about the call sign?" she asked. Isaiah nodded. "It's the same plane, the one they tried to remove me from. Same seat configuration, same route. We're reclaiming it." Aisha sat beside him, and the captain, Isaiah, smiled. That's the part that matters most. Minutes later, passengers began boarding. Cameras weren't rolling this time. Unity Air had promised passengers dignity without spectacle. But observers were everywhere. FAA reps, media in plain clothes, former Horizon staff who now quietly wore Unity badges with cautious hope. And then she entered. Captain Leona Hughes, tall, composed, late 40s, black, her pilot uniform crisp, her stride smooth, her past unforgettable. 8 years ago, Leona was grounded indefinitely after a first officer filed a professionalism complaint. The real reason she refused to fly a route after hearing a white crew member refer to Jamaican passengers as excess baggage. They said she lacked team integration. Now she stood in the cockpit of DJ-883, her name freshly printed on the manifest. Danielle, standing on the jet bridge, watched with pride. "She's really doing it," she whispered to herself. In the cockpit, Leona adjusted her earpiece, toggled the checklist, and looked over at her first officer, a young Asian woman named Kim Tran. "We've waited long enough," Leona said. "Time to fly our way." Meanwhile, at HQ, Isaiah opened a live stream portal quietly rolling out to Unity Air employees across departments. The screen displayed Unity Operational Decree 004, Decommissioning of Legacy Flight Codes. A voiceover began clear, soft, authoritative. "This is not a cancellation. This is a restoration." Aisha explained to the watching audience of flight attendants, engineers, baggage handlers, and back-office staff. All prior flight numbers associated with passenger suppression, discriminatory detainments, or bias-linked incidents have been retired. She clicked to a list. FL2187, Alexandra Reynolds incident, decommissioned. FL1621, Aisha Carter downgrade, decommissioned. CERS FL883, Isaiah Grant. Ejection, reassigned to DJ-883, Unity Grant 1. Isaiah added, "New call signs are named after the passengers who stood against it. They're not just numbers. They're stories. We are rebuilding our schedule with truth." In the terminal, a child pointed at the gate screen. "Mom, why is the flight named after a person?" His mother knelt down. "Because that person made it safe for all of us to fly today." Back in the cockpit, Leona looked toward the camera silently mounted in front of the pilot's seat. Unity Tower. "This is Grant 1 requesting clearance for pushback," Control Tower replied. "Copy that, Grant 1. You are cleared to reclaim the skies." And then the moment arrived. Engines hummed. Brake locks released. Flight DJ-883 pulled from the gate, not as a relic, but as a revolution. Inside Unity HQ, Isaiah's smartwatch buzzed. A message from Nadia in Miami FA just issued statement of recognition. Unity Air's route realignment sets new precedent for justice-aligned aviation models. Isaiah turned to Aisha. "We're not flying routes anymore," he said. "We're flying redemptions." She smiled. "We should trademark that." Danielle entered quietly from the side. "The passengers are all in. Cabin crew just reported that seat 6A. Your old seat was left open today." Isaiah paused. "Who made that call?" Danielle smiled. "Leona. She said it was symbolic. No one should sit there until we've earned this sky." Isaiah blinked just once. For the first time in years, it wasn't a flash of pain. It was a glimpse of peace. And as the plane climbed into the clouds, the cabin camera captured a simple image. Captain Leona Hughes, both hands on the controls, wings pinned to her chest, eyes steady on the horizon. The letter arrived without warning. No press release, no announcement, no handlers. Just a sleek envelope with a logo embossed in platinum foil, Stanton Voss Capital. Isaiah opened it slowly. Inside a single page. To Dr. Isaiah Grant and Unity Air. On behalf of Stanton Voss Capital, we offer both apology and amends. During the events aboard Horizon Flight 883, we were silent. Our firm, as a major investor in Horizon Star Airlines at the time, neither condemned nor acknowledged the injustice publicly. In doing so, we became complicit. Today, with humility and resolve, we seek to correct that wrong. Please accept our proposal for a strategic reinvestment into Unity Air in the amount of $1,000 USD. No equity, no voting rights, just one condition that we are allowed to help rebuild what we once ignored. Sincerely, Helena Voss. Managing partner Aisha read the letter 3 times. "It's real," she whispered. "We checked the routing. Their board has already signed off." Isaiah folded the paper calmly. "And they want redemption by writing a check." Danielle, now standing near the window, spoke softly. "That could fund 30 new hubs, 50 programs, a scholarship in every state." Isaiah looked at her. "Does that erase what happened on that flight?" "No," she said, shaking her head. "But it changes what happens next." The next day, Stanton Voss Capital requested a private audience. Isaiah agreed. They met not in a boardroom, but in the Unity Air hangar, where planes were being painted, where crews were being trained, where the smell of fuel mixed with the scent of beginning again. Helena Voss arrived dressed in gray. No photographers, no PR team, just her, and the weight of everything her company failed to do. "I was in a boardroom when you were profiled," she said to Isaiah. "We watched the story trend. We watched stock dip, but we said nothing." Isaiah didn't speak. Helena continued. "We told ourselves we weren't responsible for one flight attendant's actions. We called it isolated misconduct. But we knew. And still we stayed silent, because silence was easier than truth." Isaiah finally spoke. "Do you want forgiveness?" "Helena?" She hesitated. "No, I want to help fix what we let rot." Aisha stepped forward with a folder. "We drafted a proposal, not for equity, for accountability." Helena raised an eyebrow. Isaiah explained. "We won't accept $1 billion as a blank check, but we'll accept it as seed capital for the Unity Recovery Fund, an independent initiative to restore support and protect communities harmed by institutional neglect, administered by those communities, not by you, not by us." Helena blinked. "You mean give away the money?" Isaiah nodded. "To rebuild trust where your silence caused erosion." He stepped closer. "Let the fund sponsor scholarships, safe travel grants, re-employment programs for those unjustly dismissed by airlines, legal defense for passengers, profiled therapy access for those harmed. Let it all be public, traceable, transparent." Helena swallowed hard. That's not a returnable investment." Isaiah's voice was steady. "That's the point." A long silence. Then Helena extended her hand. "Do it. And let it bear our name, not as credit, but as confession." Isaiah shook it once. "The people it helps will decide how to remember you." 2 weeks later, Unity Air live-streamed the announcement the Unity Recovery Fund, 1,000 CERT, funded by Stanton Voss Capital, managed by independent community leaders, legal watchdogs, and racial equity boards. Oversight includes monthly reporting, third-party auditing, and passenger nomination pathways. One line dominated the headline: "When money can't erase the past, let it build the future." In the live stream's comment section, viewers poured in. This is how you use privilege right. Not forgiveness, but function. I'm here for it. Let survivors be the architects. And in a small school library in Newark, a high school senior named Tanya Harris, whose father was once detained at an airport for traveling, while Black stared at her screen in disbelief. The Unity Recovery Fund had just listed her name as a scholarship recipient. "I didn't even know I was nominated," she whispered. Her teacher smiled. "Someone knew you were watching." Back at Unity HQ, Isaiah sat quietly in his office. Aisha entered holding the formal transfer documents. "Initial funding cleared," she said. $1 billion. 0 strings. 36 community committees already formed. Isaiah nodded slowly. "We didn't take a $1 billion apology," he murmured. "We turned it into a $1 billion responsibility." And for the first time in aviation history, an airline didn't just correct its course, it redistributed the flight plan. It was supposed to be a routine morning. Flight DJ-125 to Detroit was boarding on time. The crew was prepped. The Unity badge on every uniform gleamed with quiet pride. Passengers filed in comforted by the shift in atmosphere Unity had fought hard to earn. Then the alert sounded. Unaccompanied minor at Gate 9. No guardian, no ticket, no manifest entry. Aisha's eyes snapped to the monitor. Danielle, now gate supervisor, was already on site. And Isaiah Grant, seated just 2 floors above in a compliance meeting, had his smartwatch buzz. Unidentified child, holding Unity flyer, refuses to speak. Within minutes, Isaiah arrived at Gate 9. The scene was quiet, but tense. 2 security guards stood near a girl no older than 7. Her skin was dark mahogany. Her hair in neat braids, and her dress looked recently ironed. But her eyes, wide alert, afraid told a different story. "Where's your mother?" Danielle asked gently. The girl clutched a wrinkled Unity Air pamphlet to her chest. On it, a picture of Isaiah. The caption beneath read, "Everyone deserves a seat." Isaiah stepped forward. "Hey," he said softly, kneeling to her height. "I'm Isaiah. Can you tell me your name, Silence?" He glanced at her hands. One of them held a sticker, faded and old, that read, "I flew Horizon Star." Isaiah's breath caught. Danielle leaned down beside him. We ran her face through missing persons. "No match," the child finally whispered. "My name is Amina." Isaiah's voice was gentle. "Hi, Amina. Did someone bring you here?" She shook her head. "I walked." Isaiah blinked. From where she pointed outside. "The shelter. By the old terminal. Mom used to work here." Aisha, listening through comms, froze. "Isaiah," she said into his earpiece. "Check the database." We had a file from 2018, a Horizon employee who filed a racial harassment complaint and was terminated within 30 days. Her name was Sadi Dorsey. Single mother. Last known address terminal side housing near Gate 9. Isaiah's voice dropped to a whisper. Her daughter Danielle nodded. Likely. Isaiah turned back to Amina. "Was your mom's name Said?" The girl's eyes welled up. She nodded once. Isaiah stood slowly. To the security team, he said, "She's not a trespasser. She's a descendant of our negligence." He turned to Danielle. "Clear Gate 9. No press, no cameras." Then to the staff. "She walks on this plane today, not because she has a ticket, but because we owe her the sky." Danielle whispered, "Where do we take her?" Isaiah looked to Amina. "Where did your mom always say you'd go together?" Amina didn't hesitate. She said we'd fly to see snow. She promised we'd go where it's white and soft and makes everything feel new. Isaiah turned to Aisha on comms. "Book DJ 440. Direct to Denver. Window seat. Add a flight escort. Aisha paused. There's no policy for this. Isaiah replied, then we build one. Name it after her. The Amina Clause. Emergency exception policy for any minor affected by prior employment injustice. Danielle smiled through a tear. I'll write the documentation. As passengers for DJ-440 began boarding, Unity staff formed a quiet corridor down the jet bridge. Not formal, not forced, just presence, respect. Amina walked between them, holding Isaiah's hand. As she reached the aircraft door, Captain Leona Hughes stepped out. I heard, she said softly. Isaiah nodded. Her mother tried to protect people inside a broken system. She lost everything. Today, we start returning it. Leona knelt and whispered to Amina. You like snow? Amina nodded. Then I'll fly you straight into a snowflake. With that, the doors closed. Back in HQ, Aisha updated the Unity portal. The Amina Clause added to passenger protocols. Flight DJ-440, first child of Horizon's harm, receives symbolic seat impact documentation posted in staff library under restoration in practice media, got hold of it hours later. Not from press, but from a passenger who'd witnessed the entire moment and simply tweeted, Today, I saw an airline stop for a child with no ticket and give her the sky. The post went viral. A new hashtag emerged. Seat for Amina by Sundown Unity Air's app showed a surprise Donate a Mile to the Amina Fund for children of dismissed, forgotten, or erased aviation workers. Thousands did. That night in a Denver hotel room, Amina watched snowfall for the first time. Her face pressed against the glass, her hand on the window. And in the room next door, a Unity Air mentor waited to begin the first day of the restoration program launched not from budget, but from purpose. Isaiah sat in his office watching the clip silently, then whispered to himself. She had no ticket, but she had a reason. The atrium of Unity Air's new headquarters was quiet that morning. Too quiet. It was the calm before history. A digital wall stood at the center, 30 feet wide, matte black. Waiting. Dozens of passengers, staff board members, and journalists filled the viewing circle, unaware of what was about to be revealed. No one knew the list. Only Isaiah, Aisha, and the data integrity team had seen it. Aisha stood on a low stage tablet in hand. She cleared her throat. Every airline tracks manifests who was aboard, who missed a flight, who paid, who didn't. She looked around. But what if we tracked who was removed? Who was denied, who never made it into the cabin because of race accent, gender, or silence? A long pause. Isaiah stepped forward beside her. Today, Unity Air introduces the final manifest. A soft hum spread as the black screen flickered to life. Rows of names began to scroll. Not boarding passes, not frequent flyers, but omitted souls. Margaret Harris, downgraded from 1A for passenger discomfort. David Rangel, removed mid-flight for speaking Tagalog. Saeed Ali, denied boarding after TSA agent claimed suspicious energy. Liza Rodriguez, pregnant, refused water. Escorted off for belligerence. Gasps echoed in the hall. Each entry contained year, flight number, and the original discriminatory citation, word for word. Danielle whispered behind Isaiah. Some of these go back 25 years. Isaiah nodded slowly. Some go back further, and the paper trail was buried. Aisha spoke again. We reviewed 48 incident logs from Horizon Star's archive, cross-referenced with passenger complaints, legal filings, social media footage, and TSA mismatch reports. She paused, then said, These are the people history almost erased. We call them home today. The screen continued scrolling. Jacqueline Moore, refused service after requesting allergy-friendly meal. Tyrell Jones, luggage flagged for gang-adjacent styling. Darren Grant, removed for seat confusion. Though ticket showed 3C, Isaiah froze. Darren Grant. Aisha's voice wavered. You okay? He didn't answer immediately. That's my college roommate. Danielle turned. The poet Isaiah nodded. We lost touch after graduation. He went into teaching. He'd flown to Chicago in 2014 to interview for a tenured position. I remember he said he got bumped, Isaiah whispered. He didn't get bumped. He got profiled. Aisha gently reached for his shoulder. Do you want to pause? He shook his head. No. Let it scroll. The display continued. Mako Yamada, age 11. Questioned alone for 90 minutes post-boarding Aisha Patel, harassed during internship flight by first officer, logged as miscommunication. Gasps again. Aisha blinked. She hadn't seen her own name. Danielle placed a hand over her chest. They logged you and never told you. Isaiah turned to the crowd. These were people, not errors, and for too long we let bias hide behind bureaucracy. He looked to the screen again, then reached into his pocket, pulled out a slim remote, pressed a single button. The scrolling stopped. A single name glowed in white. Darren Grant, removed for seat confusion. Date May 14, 2014. Horizon Flight 602. Isaiah took a deep breath. He died in 2016. Never got the professorship. Left academia. Went back to poetry, but never published again. I only found out when his sister emailed me after Flight 883. Danielle's eyes glistened. Would you like to read something? Isaiah nodded. He gave me this when we graduated. He opened his phone. A PDF. Then read aloud. To the sky I gave my name. To the aisle my silence. But to the window I gave hope that someday the flight would be mine again. Silence gripped the room. Then, one by one, audience members stood. Passengers. Crew. Viewers from the live stream joining in comments, read us in. Name the forgotten. Final manifest is justice with wings. Isaiah's voice cracked, but stood firm. Let this list live. Not to shame the past, but to shape what we protect next. Then he turned to the crowd. Unity Air will now institute a permanent digital archive. Public, searchable, accessible. Every passenger listed will be offered an official letter of acknowledgement compensation, when applicable, and most importantly, recorded dignity. Aisha added, no more invisibility. At the edge of the room, a young woman in her 20s raised her hand. My mom's name was up there. Jacqueline Moore. Isaiah turned. She passed last year. She used to tell me they made her cry just for asking for an almond-free tray. Her hands trembled. Thank you for not letting her be erased. Isaiah walked toward her. Her name will never fly unnoticed again. And across the sky that day, on the nose of Unity Air's newest aircraft, a fresh decal shimmered into the sun. Warti 7170s. The Darren Grant. The announcement came without warning. No teaser, no countdown, no leak. Just a single notification broadcast across Unity Air's fleet employee channels and public screens at terminals nationwide. Unity Aero Training Center, groundbreaking ceremony at Gate 0. Gate 0 wasn't a terminal, it was a concept. A slab of old concrete behind Unity's Miami hangars, long abandoned. Once used by Horizon Star for holding unscheduled labor, mostly janitorial and night shift tech crews, often staffed by immigrants. Now it would become a launch pad for those the industry once buried. Isaiah stood beside Aisha as the crowd gathered around the platform. No red carpets, just steel beams behind them and scaffolding waiting for purpose. Today, Aisha began. We build not just new runways, but new wings. She turned to Isaiah. He stepped up, holding a flight helmet in one hand and a wrench in the other. Some of you don't know this, he said. But my father was a mechanic. He taught me how to read engines before I could read poetry." Laughter rippled. He said, "Machines don't judge you by your accent, just your precision." He paused. "But humans made systems that did." Then he gestured toward the construction site behind him. "This training center isn't for those who had every advantage. It's for the ones who were told, 'You don't belong near planes, only under them.'" Murmurs of agreement flowed. Isaiah continued, "We will offer fully funded training in aviation engineering flight operations, cabin safety, and systems oversight to formerly excluded populations." Then he added, "And not just training. We're hiring every graduate." Applause broke out. Danielle, standing beside a new Unity flag, whispered to Aisha, "We had 4,000 sign-ups in 24 hours." Aisha smiled. "Let's give them the right instructor." And that's when the twist landed. Isaiah nodded to the side of the platform. A man walked forward. Late 50s, broad shoulders, dark hands stained with years of grease. His jumpsuit didn't have stripes, but his walk carried command. Jean-Benoit Marius. Isaiah turned to the crowd. This man was fired in 2010 by Horizon Star. Gasps for what someone shouted. Isaiah raised his hand. For using Creole with another Haitian crew member during overnight maintenance. They called it unauthorized code communication. People turned to each other in disbelief. Isaiah looked directly at Jean. "You fixed systems that never thanked you. You solved problems in silence." Then he handed John the wrench. "And now you'll lead the ones who never got their license because no one offered translation." Jean swallowed hard. "I never thought I'd be invited to a stage." Isaiah smiled. "That's because they thought stages were only for show. We think they're for start." The crowd erupted. As John took the mic, his voice trembled, but his words didn't. "For years, I trained people in parking lots after my shifts. In Creole, in Spanish, in Tagalog. Nobody watched, but we fixed planes that flew senators and CEOs." He paused. "I wasn't silent. I just wasn't amplified." Then he lifted the wrench to the crowd. "We don't fix jets. We fix justice. One bolt at a time." Applause thundered. Cameras turned to Isaiah and Aisha. Reporters clamored. "How many trainees per year?" Isaiah replied, "First year 600. By 2027, 3,000 annually. All paid, all certified." Aisha added, "No tuition, no English fluency test, curriculum in 12 languages, hands-on, equity-powered." Another reporter. "How's this being funded?" Isaiah, part Unity Recovery Fund, part internal reinvestment. We cut executive bonuses to make room. Someone shouted, "What about pushback from legacy contractors?" Isaiah replied without blinking. They had their time. Now it's gate zero for the rest of us. Then, from the back of the crowd, a teenage girl stepped forward, thin, nervous, holding a folded paper. She raised her hand. "May I speak?" Isaiah gestured gently. "Of course." She approached the mic. "I'm Lian Tran. My dad worked for Horizon's cleaning crew for 22 years. He never touched a cockpit, but he memorized aircraft schematics in his notebook." She opened the paper. "He died last year. Said his dream was to sit in a simulator seat just once." Her eyes welled up. "So today, I signed up." Tears. Everywhere. Danielle hugged her. Isaiah turned back to the crowd. "This is what legacy looks like. Not stock options, but seat upgrades for the forgotten." Then Jean handed Lian the wrench. "Your turn," he said. And together they approached the steel beam behind them, raised the first ceremonial bolt, and broke ground, with silence turned into power. Isaiah sat in the Unity Air Review Lounge, his smartwatch glowing quietly with live metrics. Unity's trust index had passed 94%. Employee engagement was up 72%. The Amina clause was being requested in 4 countries, yet his mind wasn't on numbers. It was on a face, quiet, unreadable, and burned into memory. Row 7A. The woman who sat there during Flight 883. She hadn't spoken, hadn't shouted, hadn't filmed, but she watched everything, then vanished. Until now. A security team pinged Isaiah early that morning. Subject Claudia Ride boarding DJ717 to Seattle flagged due to internal match on 2018 whistleblower file. Action recommended review only. Isaiah frowned. He pulled up the old record. Claudia M. Reed, former internal audit executive at Horizon Star, suspended without cause in late 2018 after submitting sealed documentation to the FAA. The file had no outcome, just one note. Subject opted for NDA after threat of termination. Relocated to Portland. No further trace. But now she was back on Unity's system and requesting a meeting. Isaiah agreed. Claudia entered the Unity executive suite quietly. Jeans, gray jacket, no makeup, no staff, just presence. 7 years, she said. Isaiah nodded. You were there that day. Seat 7A. Claudia looked up. I saw everything. Victor hitting your phone. Claire deleting your name. I saw the cabin crew console override, Isaiah asked. Why didn't you speak? I did, she said softly, then opened a weathered manila envelope. Inside, printed screenshots, internal memos, and most damning, an old Horizon Star terminal code log with user tags. Isaiah read the names aloud. E. Pierce, R. Vaughn, C. Donovan, all flagged, all linked to racial targeting protocols used to preemptively block disruption risk passengers, mostly non-white travelers with upgraded seats. Codename Maple, Claudia whispered. Isaiah blinked. I thought we uncovered everything. She shook her head. You uncovered behavior. I buried structure. He looked at her stunned. These are compliance directives. Claudia nodded. They were funneled through Horizon's risk subsystem, justified under passenger stability forecasting. But really, they were designed to profile high-value travelers that didn't look like the board. Isaiah sat down slowly. Claudia continued. I pushed back, submitted findings to the FAA in 2018. They ghosted me. Horizon's legal called me 3 hours later and offered severance. Aisha entered quietly. Why now? Claudia looked her dead in the eye. Because now, your voice is louder than their silence. She slid the final document across the table. Signed internal directives, with board initials, stamped. Isaiah didn't touch it yet. Why risk it? You signed the NDA. Claudia exhaled. I watched that little girl Amina board a plane without a ticket and be met with love. I cried for 2 days, and I realized it's not silence that protects us anymore. She stood. You don't need to credit me. Just use it, Isaiah whispered. We will. Claudia walked toward the door, then paused. Row 7A. It's open now, isn't it? Isaiah nodded. We've kept it unsold since the day you disappeared. Claudia turned. Then let someone worthy sit there next. Hours later, Unity Air uploaded a bombshell to its public site, revealed Horizon Star's secret Maple program. Internal profiling system targeting high-value non-white passengers, 79 confirmed incidents, 212 suppressed complaints, 3 executive signatures, evidence submitted to FAA NTSB and congressional oversight. Social media erupted. This isn't bias. This was engineering racism. Unity didn't just pull back the curtain. They took down the stage. Claudia Reed deserves a monument. But her name wasn't mentioned. Isaiah had followed her wish. In the next board meeting, Aisha announced effective immediately any airline executive found to have implemented passenger suppression algorithms will face lifetime industry disqualification under FAA standards. It passed unanimously. 3 days later, an industry newsletter leaked Richard Vaughn, barred for life, Claire Donovan, license revoked, Ethan Pierce, under federal investigation, and row 7A on flight DJ-883's next journey, a small gold plaque was installed on the headrest in honor of the watcher. You didn't shout, you didn't film, but you remembered, and you returned. Passengers touched it as they passed, many not knowing the full story, but feeling the weight. And somewhere in a small apartment in Portland, Claudia Reed watched from a cracked laptop. She smiled once, then whispered, they saw her. The plaque was small, just brushed steel, no gold, no marble, just words etched with humility and weight, seat 6A, where silence refused to bend, where power didn't raise its voice but changed the flight plan for us all. The cabin of Unity Air Flight 001 shimmered in soft light as passengers boarded. A quiet reverence pulsed through the aisle. No music, no ads, just awareness. Because today, this wasn't just a flight. It was a send-off, and not of a man, of a movement. Isaiah Grant sat in seat 6A one last time. His suit was navy. No tie. His smartwatch dimmed. His hands folded on his lap like a passenger, not a chairman. He looked out the window, not to admire the sky, but to say goodbye. Across the cabin, Aisha Patel watched quietly. Beside her sat Danielle. Behind them, trainees from the Unity Aero Training Center, graduates of the Amina Claus engineers, mentored by Jean-Benoit Marius whistleblowers, turned reformers. The plane this time was full of people who never had a seat before. Isaiah stood. May I have your attention? Just for a moment. Passengers quieted. Even the engines felt like they listened. I've sat in this chair longer than I was supposed to. Not because I loved power, but because the work wasn't finished. He smiled. But this chair, this isn't mine. Not anymore. He gestured to 6A. This chair belongs to everyone who was ever asked to wait to move to prove they belonged. Aisha's eyes welled up. Danielle reached for her hand. Isaiah continued. I'm stepping down as Unity Air's CEO effective today. But before I go, I need you to know legacy isn't about what you build. He paused. It's about what you leave behind that can't be erased. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet pouch. Inside a single boarding pass. Passenger Unity Future Seat 6A status unstoppable. He handed it to a young boy in row 3B. Your name's Elijah, right? He asked. The boy nodded, eyes wide. You want to be a pilot? Yes, sir. Isaiah smiled. Then you start with this. Elijah held the pass like a treasure. Can I really sit there someday? Isaiah bent slightly. You already did. In every moment we fought for that seat to mean more than fabric and space. Then he turned to the full cabin. You don't have to own an airline to change it. You don't need billions to break bias. You just need to remember what silence costs and decide not to pay it again. Tears weren't loud, but they ran freely. From staff, from passengers, from the woman in row 7A who now smiled with quiet triumph. Aisha stepped forward. We've renamed this aircraft, she said. It will no longer be Flight 001. She pointed to the cabin screens. They flickered, then displayed a new name. Unity Legacy. Flight for all applause erupted. Isaiah stepped back, eyes full, but voice steady. One last thing, he said. Then turned to the camera, broadcasting the flight's final moment live to millions around the world. If you've ever been denied a seat on a plane in a room at a table, don't wait for someone to give you permission. He smiled. Build your runway, and take off anyway. He paused, then offered a gentle call to all watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to catch more gripping stories like this. Thanks for watching, and see you next time. As Isaiah walked down the aisle, passengers touched his hand. Some whispered thanks, others simply nodded. Seat 6A remained empty, not in absence, but in honor, because sometimes the loudest seat on a plane is the one that reminds us who's still rising.